This week we have some very potent themes around having a spotlight on our shadows, aspects of ourselves that maybe we've pushed down to be accepted by our community on a more intimate or greater level, especially seeing that we have a Scorpio full moon happening this week, along with a very notable transit between Lilith and Jupiter, where Lilith's aspects and energy is really being amplified around this time. I think that this week will be very interesting, potentially a little dramatic, but ultimately really a shining a light and offering a path for us to dive deeper with our relationship with ourselves and holding space for all aspects of our personality to shine through in a comfortable and accepted space. Hello friends, it's your girl Alina, and in this video we'll be diving into the week ahead as I cover Monday, April 22nd to Sunday, April 28th. And as mentioned, we do have a Scorpio full moon this week, and I actually did an even deeper dive specifically just on that lunation, where I cover all signs and how this lunation will directly be impacting you based off of your rising sign. So if you want to dive even deeper on that specific transit for this week, be sure to check out that video, but let's dive into the week ahead. So on Monday, April 22nd, we know that Monday is ruled by the moon. So it's a great day for tapping into all things that the moon directly influences, that being our inner world, how we process things, how we process our emotions, and our intuitive downloads. So Monday can be a day, I think, that you might already start to notice these full moon themes a bit more potently on that day. We also see that the moon will be transiting the sign of Libra. So bringing in these underlying themes on Monday around our relationships, justice, and equitability, how we balance things out in relationships. So Monday can be a great day for reflecting upon our relationships, also reflecting upon specifically, something that I like to focus on Mondays is how am I nourishing myself in my inner world? How can I call my energy back to myself if it feels like I need to, and pour into myself? That way throughout the week, I can continue to pour into other areas of my life. So that's something to consider. We also don't have any major transits that day, but like I said before, I think that especially because Monday is ruled by the moon and we have this Scorpio full moon happening the next day, a lot of those full moon lunation themes will already start to be being felt. Next, on Tuesday, we know that Tuesday is ruled by Mars, the planet of action, taking initiative, things like war, sometimes even aggression and passion. And Tuesday in general is a great day. I feel like Tuesday should be our new Monday. I talked about this before, how we should have a 4-day work week and have a 3-day weekend. And I feel like the week should start on Tuesday because of that action-oriented aspect. But there's a lot of energy on Tuesday, and really this week, because of this Scorpio full moon that will be happening on this day. And I say that because full moons are all about being in action. It's this energetic high point in the lunar cycle. And full moons in general are seen as this cosmic spotlight that can illuminate for us aspects of our lives that are working and aren't working midway through the lunar cycle. And just as we see that the light has been building since the new moon all the way to its energetic peak at a full moon, so too can the momentum around any intentions that we set around the new moon, or any sort of actions or things that we might have started around the time of the new moon, also build in momentum. And we can tend to also more clearly see how things are coming to fruition in different ways and how things are playing out. And that's one of the reasons why people do full moon rituals, where they take time to reflect on these areas that are being spotlighted or whatever is coming up from them around that time. And they decide whether or not they want to maybe release anything that's no longer serving them. Another aspect of a full moon, and moons in general, like I mentioned before on Monday, is that it directly impacts our inner world. And so just as we see that the moon can raise the tides around a full moon, so too can it raise our emotional and intuitive abilities and kind of bring that to the surface. That's another reason why you might have heard about how sometimes there can be arguments or disagreements or things like that happen around the time of full moons. And it's a huge aspect of that from an astrological perspective, is that it's a lot easier to tap into and to kind of like, it's harder to hold down our inner dialogue and our inner world, how we're actually feeling. And I think that that's why there can be a lot more outbursts or professings of feelings, whether that's love or excitement or anything. And full moons in general can be a very social time as well for that reason. But going back to the fact that this is a full moon in Scorpio, oh my goodness. So Scorpio rules the eighth house, and it's all about our long-term relationships, long-term investments. And that can be financial, but also investing our time and energy and emotions, blood, sweat, and tears into things in our life, whether that be relationships, work, anything. And the other thing about Scorpio too is that they're a lot more easily tapped into the shadow aspects of life, our shadow sides, things that we might hide away or push down to be accepted by our communities, or maybe personality traits that we push down because we're told, no, that's bad. An example of that can be jealousy. You know, nobody likes to talk about jealousy, but we all experience it at some point in our life. And it's a very human thing to feel. Jealousy from an unconstructive perspective can be like, that's bad because you're hating on somebody and you're not liking someone and all these things, right? And so we tend to push that down and not want to talk about it or admit it, right? That can be an example of a shadow aspect of ourselves. But a constructive perspective of jealousy, so for an example of us looking at our shadows or these traits that maybe we're feeling, and we're like, oh, I shouldn't be feeling this, but what about that? But you're still feeling it. A constructive way of looking at a shadow like that, like jealousy, is oftentimes, jealousy is actually information of sometimes what we want deep down, but we're either afraid to go for it. Maybe we have our own societal conditioning that told us that we're not worthy of that. But ultimately, jealousy is usually seeing somebody have something that you want, and instead of maybe seeing that from a constructive and sort of growth mindset perspective of like, you know what, the universe is limitless. So seeing somebody have that is actually an indicator that it's possible for me to have it potentially, or seeing it from that perspective, or even separate from that, seeing it from the perspective of like, because I'm jealous, I know for sure that there's something that I want. And with that clarity of knowing that there's a piece of something there that I want, I can write that down, and now I can refocus my energy to go getting that. And so there can be a lot of beautiful insight and a pathway to being more intimate with ourselves and others when we can hold space for ours and others' shadow sides, and basically co-create a reality in an environment where we're not shaming one another for very human experiences. And the reason why I say that too is because going back to the full moons, like I said before, they're all about being a cosmic spotlight. They can tend to highlight things in our lives. And with it transiting Scorpio, I think that this full moon will be most potently highlighting shadow aspects of ourselves and calling us to dive a bit deeper. And depending on your rising sign, that can manifest and show up in different ways. So like I said before, I have a full video where I dive in even deeper of this full moon, with this full moon, the context of it relative to Mercury going direct this week as well, and the context to surrounding transits, as well as how it will specifically impact you based off of your rising sign. So if that interests you, be sure to check out the video on my channel. It's the last video that I posted before this one. But yeah, so having that consideration on Tuesday, there's a lot of those themes going on. And we also see that on Tuesday, the moon will be entering Scorpio. So it will be newly in the sign of Scorpio. And so I think that a lot of this energy that we're feeling with this full moon will be potently felt on this day. And like I mentioned in my last video, the sun entered the sign of Taurus in the previous week. And so we see that the sun in Taurus is in opposition with the moon in Scorpio. So another aspect of the full moon is that we're being called to strike a balance in a lot of ways between these dualities of the sun's more solar, the sun impacts more of our ego, this balance between like the practical and the consistent and the predictable, and being a bit more fluid and a bit more open to diving deeper into things, less material, that being the more Taurus themes, and diving into the depths of our psyche and why we want something in a lot of ways. So there's a very interesting duality there that we're being called to dive deeper into as well. Now, next on Tuesday, if you thought like, okay, like we're going to be having some shadow themes going on, like, maybe this week might be a little bit more emotionally intense in that way, where, it could manifest even as like potential triggers or other people who are feeling sensitive. if you thought that that was it, it is not, because on Wednesday, we know that the day is ruled by Mercury. So Wednesday is all about communication. It's a great day for things like networking, socializing, going out with friends, expressing yourself, also learning, seeking information, asking questions, and receiving, especially when it comes to all things out of air. So also things having to do with the internet as well, or even short-term travel. On Wednesday, we also see that Jupiter in Taurus will be trining Lilith, an asteroid, which is currently in the sign of Virgo. Now, when we see this type of transit, it can tend to create an environment where if we choose to dive into aspects of our shadow, specifically our more feminine aspects of our shadow, there's a lot of luck and potential for expansion in those spaces. And it's very interesting that this is happening close to a Scorpio full moon because of that. And so for anybody who's not familiar with Lilith, Lilith is an asteroid. It's not a planet or major astral body like, say, the moon. In astrology, it's believed to rule over our more raw, primal energy. So think more of our like sexual energy, our more rebellious energy, not always wanting to assimilate with society in some ways. And it can also tap into like our desires and our passions. When we see that Lilith, which controls a lot of those shadow aspects of femininity, like these strong passions, these more almost like feral personality traits of just really having this passion. I have notes of wanting to rebel, seeking power, just listening really to our instincts as well, and not taking as much consideration of like societal programming, but it's like, what is on your heart right now? When we see that Lilith and Jupiter come together in this way, basically, there is a lot of energetic support and even Jupiter's expansive luck around us if we choose to take the path of exploring and questioning and leaning into our shadow aspects of ourselves that Lilith influences and impacts in our lives. And considering that this is the day after a Scorpio full moon, where Scorpio is all about the shadow aspects of ourselves and looking at those things and holding space for those things in a lot of ways and getting intimate and thinking, again, like Scorpio in the 8th house is all about those long-term investments, relationships. And what do we see in long-term relationships? You get real. You get really real. You get very intimate in these spaces because you're slowly opening up and you're becoming more vulnerable with one another, and you're showing to one another through these vulnerabilities and through holding space for people's vulnerabilities that you're a safe person, and you're co-creating this reality and this ability to hold space for the sometimes socially acceptable surface level personality that we show to like our neighbors and the people we work with and, kind of newer associates and people. And it's this avenue that allows us to dive deeper in a lot of ways. So around this time, especially on Tuesday, Wednesday, but throughout this week, there's likely going to feel like it's easier to feel passion, like a lot more passion. And if you feel comfortable with it, holding space for that and really asking yourself, where is this coming from? Why do I feel this way? Like, and I feel like something that can be very helpful is also tapping into like aspects of our childhoods too, and asking like, how are we feeling around this time? What were things that we felt like we maybe needed to push down when we were a kid, when we were just learning our emotions? And was that legit, or was it just social programming that told me it was bad? And like, how can it manifest and show up in our lives present day in a constructive way that's healthy? Following Wednesday, on Thursday, April 25th, we see that Thursday is ruled by Jupiter, okay? So I really think that, this transit of Jupiter with Lilith will also be potently felt on Thursday for that reason. But in general, Thursdays, because they're ruled by Jupiter, they can be very lucky days. They can feel a little bit lighter, a little bit more expansive in terms of like the possibilities of what could be around us. I think partially like when we look at the work week in general, it's like by Thursday we've kind of hit a stride, or we feel a little bit lighter because we know, oh, okay, well, tomorrow's Friday. And so there's that levity there, and understanding that Jupiter rules over this day, we can really tap into that if we want to, especially in terms of manifestation and things like that. But On some really good news, on Thursday, we see that Mercury officially stations direct in Aries, meaning it has ended its retrograde. Let's go. And so what is so great about Mercury ending its retrograde, in order to understand the benefits of it, we need to look back at what the retrograde really involves. And a huge aspect of retrogrades is that we can tend to experience a lot of stagnation, potential hiccups or mishaps when it comes to things that we're trying to do that are connected to the aspects of our lives that Mercury influences. Considering that Mercury directly rules over our communication, information exchange, socializing, making plans, travel, all of these things, considering that it's now going out of retrograde, you might start to feel, especially near the end of this week, like you're finally being able to articulate and put words to a lot of your experiences over the month of April, whether that be around experience that you had, maybe connecting the dots around the eclipse, connecting the dots around this full moon, and really being able to articulate yourself in a lot of ways. Now, I will say that the post-shadow period following Mercury retrograde will last until about May 13th. So there's still a slight potential that there might be some more Mercury retrograde type mishaps. So it's still important to, proceed with caution in that way. But ultimately, Mercury retrograde's lesson, and most retrograde's lessons, is asking for us to pause and reflect and be intentional in aspects of our lives that Mercury rules over, and depending on the house that it's transiting. Just continuing to be intentional in how you communicate and making sure to really dot your I's, cross your T's, especially when making plans. I feel like, I think I said this in my last video, but I just feel like the pre-shadow period this year, so many people, myself and my friends included, felt it before Mercury even went retrograde. And I think that the eclipse season in general took a part in that, but that's something to be considerate of. I think that Thursday will be a day that feels like there's a bit of levity. We also see that the moon will be entering the sign of Sagittarius. Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter on Thursday. So we have this lunar support as well, where it's in Sagittarius. And the thing about it being in Sagittarius, it can feel a lot easier for us over the next few days. So let's say like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, to learn more, expand our awareness in a lot of ways. And I think that following a Scorpio full moon, where there's this higher likelihood that aspects of our shadow are being highlighted, or we're being called to kind of look into those spaces, I think that it following with a Sagittarius moon, it can be very helpful in that it's expanding our awareness. It's allowing for us to be in a space of learning and receiving new information that can help us better understand the state that we're in, the state that the world is in a lot of ways. So Thursday through Saturday can be a great research days for that reason, considering what sign Sagittarius that the moon will be transiting. Now on Friday, we don't have any major transits, but as many of y'all know, Friday is ruled by Venus, the planet of love and relationships. So especially, in my opinion, if you had a harder week, maybe a heavier, more emotionally heavy week, or there was like a lot of energy, you felt like there was a lot of energy, I feel like Friday is a great day to really rest, pour into yourself, give yourself love, give love to others, and create a very romantic space, whether it's for yourself or someone else. The next day, Saturday, also doesn't have any major transits, but we see that there will be potent ones on Sunday. But Saturday is ruled by Saturn day. So it's a great day for really getting responsibilities done. It's a great day for getting chores done, getting things done around the house, because Saturn is considered the strict teacher. It's the type of planet that can sometimes make things a bit harder for us, but ultimately it's through strict lessons that we're being called to learn. And the thing too is that if you've learned these lessons, Saturn's energy doesn't always hit you as hard as others, or as it has in the past. So in general, Saturday is a great day for basically upholding your responsibilities, and like I said before, because it's the weekend for most of us, it's a great day for doing chores, doing things that honor yourself. I feel like Saturday is a great day also for reflecting on what are the promises that I made to myself? How can I show up for myself? And that can also look like planning for the week ahead in some ways of how am I going to show up for myself? How am I going to take responsibility in those ways? All right. And finally, on Sunday, April 28th, we see that Sunday is ruled by the sun. So it's a very nourishing day. It's a very illuminating day. It's a day of recharging, think of your crystals out in the sun or the moon, or think of a turtle just laying out. It's a potent day that's very energetically supported for recharging on a physical, spiritual level, and emotional level. So if you're considering a good day for kind of calling your energy back to yourself and nourishing yourself in that way, Sunday is great for that. We also see that on Sunday, Mars in Pisces will be conjunct with Neptune in Pisces. So this is a type of transit that can make it feel a lot easier to take aligned actions with our dreams. So, and I say that because Mars is the planet of action, of taking initiative, of strength, and of courage, and sometimes of anger as well. You know, it's the ruling planet of Aries, and you know that association with that cardinal energy of taking initiative and being in action. And it's coming together in a complementary transit with Neptune, which is the planet of our dreams, our imagination, our spirituality, illusions, and sometimes even delusions, and tapping into other dimensions, other realms, you know what I mean? And so when they come together in this way, it can feel a lot easier to take aligned steps with our spiritual paths, take aligned actions with our dreams, and really take the ideas that we have floating in the ether and really bring them down into reality through our aligned steps, our aligned actions, whether that's writing them down or getting really clear on them. It's very potent for a Sunday because a lot of us on the weekend, on Saturday and Sunday, we tend to plan for the week. So I think that it's actually a great day for getting very clear on what's your routine for the week ahead. It can also be, I feel like it can also be a great time for like a Sunday reset as well. And for any of y'all who don't know what that is, it's basically when you kind of sit down and you ask like, how can I set myself up for success this week? So an example of that I've been doing, not consistently, y'all, but it's been helpful, has been making sure that my laundry is done specifically so I can have my workout clothes folded and in an easy to access place. That way in the mornings that I work out, there's less friction between me and the thing I need to do. So there's that. But I really think that aligned actions also don't even necessarily need to be tied to productivity. They can be tied to being in action when it comes to taking aligned steps with our spiritual health, our imaginative and creative health, because Neptune is it rules over those things. It rules over our creativity, our imagination, and that can look like, how can I move away from all this productivity and feeding into all that and move more into this more fluid world and aspects of myself, of holding space for, setting aside time for my creativity, for putting my words on a piece of paper, for allowing and transmuting what I'm feeling to flow through in some way that is nourishing to myself. The other thing about Mars conjuncting with Neptune, especially in Pisces, is that there's a higher potential for potentially over-idealizing things, where you're like, you know what? It's just gonna happen. It is just gonna happen. That can definitely happen in also more emotional relationships of the heart, whether it's romantic, close friendships, things like that, where we can over-idealize things. So it's important to, you know, consider keeping your feet on the ground, especially with Mars, because the thing is that Mars is about taking aligned actions and being practical with our actions, right? So definitely like be ambitious, take aligned steps. It's a very lucky time. You know, we saw that Jupiter came together with Uranus in the previous week. There's a lot of lucky energy happening around this time. You know, Jupiter and Lilith as well, especially if we are leaning into our authenticity. But it's important to keep your feet on the ground in terms of what are actual practical steps that will get me to where I would like to go. But yeah, everyone, that concludes my horoscope reading for the week ahead. If you like this video, I would love, the number one way that you can support my video is just hitting the like button. If you made it to the end of this video, I would love if you commented 3 black hearts to represent shadow aspects of ourselves and how we need to love every aspect of ourselves. But I'd love to hear your feedback in the comments if you've experienced any of these transits, but also for last week, if you've been watching these videos, this is my 4th video of weekly horoscope. So it's been a month and I've really enjoyed having these conversations with you, reading your comments about how your week has been playing out, what has and hasn't resonated with you. But yeah, I'd love to hear about that stuff. I would also love to hear if you've already been feeling the Scorpio full moon energy, because I feel like I'm already feeling that in a lot of ways. But with that said, I will see you in the next one, and I'm sending you my love, and I'll end this with my favorite quote, and that is, be gentle with yourself, because life is about the journey, not the destination. Okay, peace, friends. Bye.